Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Thiago Leão. He is the founder of the Primary Witness, and he is a dedicated psychotherapist and a mental health expert. This is not all about you, Tiago. I know that you also teach at the Naropa University. You're pursuing a doctor's degree in philosophy, which is wonderful. And you also have danced, and you still are very much connected to Buddhism. You're an active member in the Denver Psychoanalytic Society and has been recognized for your contributions to mental health care, and you hold several awards. You also host a podcast titled The Primary Witness. So this is my brief introduction about you, and I always do this very brief. The full bio will be at the end. The questions that I always ask my guests is, about identification. So that question never left me. How do we see ourselves? So if you were to introduce yourself right now here on this podcast, who is Tiago in his own words?
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of laudits over there. I don't identify with those things. I think that I appreciate the question. I like to think of myself as someone who is trying to be of service and being useful to people while valuing as much humility as I can, and trying to be wise about that, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
strong without boasting it, and vulnerable when it requires to do that. And I've learned that it's hard to be genuinely helpful, and sitting in that place of what it actually means to be genuinely helpful is something particular and meaningful, and doing something meaningful for me at the same time.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers a bit of what you asked.
Yes, it does, and kind of makes me curious about more things. You just made a very interesting statement about being helpful, but in a way that's not really trying too hard. That you're being helpful both ways, in a way, to yourself and others. Is that what people call purpose? A lot of people have this idea of mission, a calling, or living this a sense of purpose in life. Is that how you see this whole idea of helping others as a purpose? Or
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Um, I suppose human relate. I'm slightly biased, of course, because I'm psychologist, psychotherapist,
yeah,
and I suppose my bias in that is that our relationships are the things that matter the most, one way or another,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we're deeply impacted by our relationships, and
Right, right.
we, and I think when
Huh.
we speak of ourselves and other,
Yeah.
doing self and other.
Mm,
Um, and I think establishing our own territory in ourselves and feeling comfortable
huh.
in ourselves
Mm,
and feeling like we can connect genuinely from that place with others probably produces that type of connection. I think, I suppose, when it clicks on a certain
yeah,
level,
yeah. Huh.
it produces a tremendous sense of purpose for people organically. I think so. I think so.
Mm. So by knowing oneself, in a way, we are kind of sending that message of getting to know oneself is the most important thing, or it is something that matters. That's what I understood from you, the comment that you just made, because we can't really give what we don't have, isn't it, Tiago? So we have to be there already, in a way, in order
That
to give.
totally correct. I mean, I'm reminded of something, we used to say in Brazil, or at least
Yeah,
I heard growing up, saco furado não para em pé,
yeah,
which is that
yeah,
which essentially means
yeah.
it's something of the notion of putting your own gas mask
Mm,
or your
yes,
oxygen mask on first. There's a
right.
reason for that.
Mm,
Yes,
yes, a
yes.
billion times. So that's truth. So we talked briefly off record. I would love the audience to know as well the reason why you became a psychotherapist. What inspired you to do what you're doing today?
Yeah. Thank you again for the question. I think in 2003 I came to the United States as a young man, and was I didn't really know then that I was going to become a therapist, and I spent, I extended my undergrad for some time, and I studied religion, psychology, yoga at the time, and I started, it was like 8 years into studying the Dharma and these things. By then was 2008, 2009, 2008. And it was a nexus of knowledge that I was like, okay, what do you do? What do you
Yeah.
do with this?
Yeah.
And how can you be,
Huh. Yeah.
how can you get all this stuff and actually apply it
Right. Right.
in the world as
Right.
it is? Because
Right.
that's what I was fundamentally interested in, is sort of
Right.
trying to meet the world where it's at, which is
Mm.
very challenging. I
Mm.
still try to do
Yes.
that
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
And um and uh so
Mm.
so psychotherapy seemed like an evolution, or a natural evolution of a practice, because I literally have to
Yeah.
practice. I have to show up.
Mm. Mm.
And
Yeah.
there's a business side of it, of course, but I am a clinician first.
Yeah.
Um and in that sense, it's sort of, I wanted to choose a profession that allowed me to maintain an active practice, I
Right.
suppose. And
Right.
that was very much part of it. And psychology, uh, there are days that it's a job. You have to just
Huh.
get
Oh
there, and
yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah. Yes.
I won't,
Yes. Yeah.
but at the same time, sometimes watching human beings grow and evolve
Mm.
is one of the most fascinating things there is. I do love that part of it, and I love teaching too. But it's hard to make a living from teaching, and
Mm.
so. But that was an original inspiration, that combined with trying to be helpful.
Right. Gosh, what's not to love about your wisdom? you, it's not personal; it's universal. It's like very clear to me the way you speak about your life in relation to other people in the world and what you do. It's so universal to me. Yeah, that's timeless wisdom, I feel.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, thank you for letting that wisdom flow through you the way it does, or it might be the other way around. Who knows? Who knows? So the topic is the primary witness, and I titled this episode exactly like this: the primary witness. Are we ever alone? As a question, because that ties in with a blog post that you have written for on medium.com, the loneliness of self and other. So I put those two topics together. But before that, you mentioned something interesting again about helping other people to grow, to evolve. I hear this a lot, and I myself was very much into this growing, getting somewhere, and reach a state. So, but anyway, it has changed for me a lot. But what is your interpretation of this idea of goal? What is the goal of life? What's the goal of healing? What are we doing here? What do you see as a vision?
Yeah. Well, I think we're. I'm slightly existentialist when it comes to that question, and I
Yeah.
think um, we're burdened with our own freedom, which is to say
Mm,
that we have to
mm, yeah.
realize our own power, I suppose.
Yeah.
In other words,
Yeah.
I think we're at I think at base and at heart, we are beings with a tremendous amount
Mm,
of power, insight, and strength, and
yes.
um, all
Mm,
sorts of things happens to us.
right.
History, trauma, development, the world, you name
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
All sorts of things happen to us, and I think feeling. genuinely feeling like we can be who we really are without much
Yeah.
secondary
Mm. Yeah.
compunction about it, I
Yes.
suppose.
Yes.
Too many filters about it.
Yeah.
Not again in some kind of grandiose way. Nothing,
Right.
but directly. And I think human beings are uh, better, quote
Mm,
unquote,
yeah.
when they're in that state,
Mm,
and
mm,
whatever produces that for a person,
mm,
I think there's not one way. I think that's certainly true.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
is I think in line with the answer to your question.
Yes. So that reminds me of spontaneity. Yeah, some people say coming from the heart, being authentic. Yeah, you say the word genuine. Yes. I think the only challenge with that is that we are not just one thing, right? We are psychological beings, we're emotional beings, we are essentially the foundation is spiritual from my lens.
Hmm.
So there's so many kind of layers, and I have to say we are complex at every level. If we really try to explore the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, the physical, it's so complex that I see like the influence or the impact of the physical body in the mind. It's amazing. When I'm feeling tired, automatically the mind's affected. So my mental state is not the same. And then emotionally, if something happens that reminds me of the past, of a traumatic event, then it changes again. Although I thought I was over it, and then it just comes back. So it's fascinating to see that being authentic, being spontaneous, it might be a moment to moment thing, Tiago, isn't it? We can only live in the moment, right? Maybe.
Well, yes, I suppose that the yes, you're touching. I think you're touching on the crux of it. That the 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 complexity in managing our lived experience usually goes through a lot of disappointment and heart
Mm.
and pain
Oh
and
yeah.
frustration,
Yeah.
and usually
Yeah.
disappointment of idealizations and
Mm. Yes.
um, disappointment of how we wish things were, and
Mm.
also in a
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
depending, you've touched upon the body and trauma and how things get
Oh
stored
yeah.
and sort of
Yeah.
that how did these things even come to be and why did these
Right.
things happen, and so
Right.
those
Right.
are incredibly challenging things, and depending on what's going on in the moment, those
Right.
things, I guess the feeling I was talking about of feeling connected more broadly
Yeah.
with sense of being yourself, that
Mm.
might be a very painful moment,
Mm. Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's part of the experience also, for sure. It
Right.
doesn't usually stay there,
Right.
but yes,
Right.
that can be very much part of the experience, and it is part of the
Mm.
experience, let's be honest.
Right. You just said it, the experience. So, wow. Now it's time to talk about the primary witness. I
Very
think that
good.
it just kind of weaves perfectly into that theme.
It does.
Right, the experience. So, from my understanding, my felt understanding, my meditations, reflection, contemplations, and years of studying Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, Buddhism, Tibetan, and Zen, um, I came to realize that there are two parts of this reality that which we call life. Is the one that witness everything and it's not touched by anything. It's just perfect. It is just watches everything and the experience, and then that's everything. Includes dreams and past lives and you name it. So talk to me about how do we balance in a way these two elements. It's very profound, and it's so necessary to go back to the primary witness and stay there. But can we do that? Is that really something that, because I feel pulled a lot of times to
Hmm.
experience, and it's almost as if God wants to be human. The divine wants to be more human. It feels that way, but I don't know. Of course, that's my own experience. But talk to me about this dance between the primary witness and the secondary witness.
Yes, I think that's an incredible question, and we could spend a lot of time talking
Oh,
about
yes.
that.
Ages.
So the primary witness is my sort of twist on a original Lojong slogan that goes to the heart of what you asked. And the original slogan is, of the two witnesses, choose the principal one. So of the two witnesses, choose the primary one. The Lojong slogan, Lojong simply means mind training. And it's sort of, you can think of it as a mantra or as a meme,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And of the two witnesses, you choose the primary one. Now, that in a way has the answer to your question about how you work with it, because from a relative perspective, from the perspective of being tired and getting caught up in the things that are occurring in the world, or being having to deal with the demands of
Right.
whatever is going on,
Right.
or our own internal state, we can get completely lost in that. In the meditation practice, the meditation metaphor for all this, the very, very basic start of the training, as I'm sure you know, right? That notion of when your mind becomes distracted and it notices that it's distracted, the very act, that awareness of noticing that it got distracted, that is the primary witness. That is the principal witness.
Right.
The aware, rather, aside from all the technique, aside from all the count the breath or do this or that or the other, or a million techniques that there are, the thing that notices what's going on isn't, to your point, manufactured, isn't something that can be created, isn't something that can be made manifest. It is something that apparently is already given.
Right.
And if you can relax. So the beginning, the combination of the practices have to be always stabilization. So the stabilization practices that create a sense of, I guess, balance in the body and the mind. You can think of a really good yoga practice that puts you, or a really good workout, so on and so forth. And that after that, there is a relaxation, and the combination of those two things, not one or the other, puts you in a state where your awareness doesn't latch on so easily to the things that your anxiety would have you be hooked by otherwise.
Right.
And so it's a combination of an ongoing practice, and I think you get more skilled at disidentifying with all the shoulds of the secondary witness over time.
Yes.
And you find a sweet spot in the middle that's dynamic, that dances there in a certain, and I think the orbits in life change too. I think whereas sometimes you become distracted for a whole year, and it takes you a whole year to sort of regain yourself or something like that. All of a sudden, with practice and with time, age, I think there's a combination of things there, but there's practice involved in that for sure. The orbit diminishes, and it becomes easier and easier to access that.
Yeah, I never thought it that way. This cosmic influence. It's almost like it's happening for a reason. The way I came to kind of understand this in the more practical ways, that we are life itself. We're not in control of anything. There's nobody really specifically here doing anything. So I think that the problem is that the I is being used in this in a personal way. I think that's the main. It's not a mistake, but it's just something that caused a lot of unnecessary suffering.
You're 100%. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We become deeply self-involved.
Yes. Yeah.
We
And then,
we
yeah.
we do, and
Yeah.
we're our own great project. We are
Right.
our own
Yes.
great project all the
Yes.
time,
Yes.
and if we can get it, and but letting go of that, I think is a tremendous
Right.
challenge.
Right. Yeah. It's not easy. And that's why you're here. You and so many other people that I meet, beautiful people. Wow,
Of
I
course.
can't thank you enough. Um, so another thing that I wanted to bring up to this conversation just now, oh gosh, I don't want to forget that. What did I yes, about this, the primary witness, and the secondary. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, suffering. No, I
If it
just
comes back to you, you just
yeah,
yeah.
it will come back. So I trust that. Who knows what's meant to come back? It will. So an open question for you, like from just to throw in this here. How do you see this idea of? Oh yeah, just remember mental health. So mental health relates a lot to emotional and mental well-being. So a lot of times we try to medicate emotional health with spiritual knowledge. So we're trying to
Ah,
solve an emotional problem with a spiritual in with the spiritual solution, but it never works. It has been my experience having a lot of trauma and trying to solve everything through spirituality. It's just never worked. So how do you combine the two in a very skillful way, not to say wise way, so your clients and yourself kind of come to understand that everything needs to be addressed at that realities level and not mixing them.
this is I really appreciate that question because I think talk about wisdom. That's a very wise question in my opinion, and very poignant because yes, that is a problem, and I think people do try it, and
Yes, I did.
well, yeah, we're right. We all do. I'm guilty too, and I think um, the answer to me has come to be that what the Eastern technologies have, this, whether we take Hinduism,
Yeah,
Advaita is a perfect example of this, and
yeah,
the Dharma, broadly speaking,
yeah,
is that they have elevated the practice and the technology of this on the individual level, on sort of like for you alone with yourself. And I mean,
yes,
you might imagine here sort of the Himalayan city, Siddha,
mm,
sitting on the mountaintop, so on and so forth.
yeah,
That there's these level of practices, advanced practices for you alone with yourself, and they do one set of things,
right,
and there's a range of those practices. What we in the West have developed with psychology and psychotherapy is the advancement and the science, in you, if you will,
yeah,
of the human relationship itself.
mm,
And so, and this is a very important thing because you need both.
right,
There are
yeah,
things that I had a professor in grad school that used to say what gets wounded in relationship needs to get healed in relationship.
mm,
So we have deep
yeah,
relational wounds.
yes,
And
yeah,
in that sense, there's very few
mm,
things that you're going to do alone by yourself. Not
mm,
that they're going to synergize. You see, your spiritual
yeah,
practice, your Dharma practice, your
yeah,
practice is going to synergize, and sometimes you just need, right? In therapy, we say sometimes people come in for a little bit and they go away. Like you don't know why they went away, but
yeah,
they find another therapist, or they find another coach, or they find something else. They pick up something along the way, but it was a
right,
relational component that
right,
mattered and was important. And so
right, right,
there are deep emotional wounds to the self that need to be healed in a
mm,
context of
mm,
what Fritz Perls, the psychologist, said: the safe emergency of the therapeutic encounter. And in the safe emergency of the human relationship,
mm,
and
yeah,
there's, to your point,
mm,
few relationships where it's right, trusting
yeah,
takes time, establishing safety takes time. There are
yeah,
certain things that only show up in relationship. And
right,
likewise, I think there's only
right,
things that are going to show up if you have the courage and the practice to go be sitting by yourself somewhere alone with yourself.
Right.
And that's a very powerful thing.
Right. Right.
Both have biases. I think the East has the bias that that's all you need. You'll be fine if
Yeah.
you just do that. And in
Yeah.
the West, it's like all you need is a shrink and you'll be fine. You don't need
Yeah.
anything else. I think both are wrong in that way.
Yeah, we need both, right? So I like something that you said about that. That's exactly, yeah. Just going back to that idea, emotional, trying to solve emotional problems with spiritual remedies, it never works. It has been my case, and it feels to me like psychology deals a lot with. Again, with that, the secondary witness attaching to belief systems and stories and all that, and that needs to be corrected. And you're right, that takes practice, a therapy, and so many other healing modalities that will address that. But then, in my case, has been kind of leaving that the I that I believed to be a person and going more universal, kind of broaden my view of myself and life and the natural world and everything with it. It just changed everything, but at the same time, it didn't. I still feel the movements. Let's say the responses of trauma in the body and mind from time to time, but that's something that I can safely kind of witness and 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 kind of not even do something about it, just let them come and go, and they do. That's feels like almost like a magic to me, but has solved a lot of my emotional problems in a sense of not being healed perhaps at the level of the body with all the somatic therapy and all those things, but something that I'm able to manage from my spiritual perspective. So I'm wondering if that's something that you have experienced with or have seen with others.
Yes, I completely share and identify with what you just that that a certain type of faith that you have or the practice that you have or the relationship you have
Yeah.
with thing that is beyond you is a
Mm,
tremendous
mm,
resource
yeah.
and a tremendous can just sustains. And when I think we weren't recording, but I said that I felt like the Dharma saved my life.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the answer, and I see that clinically as well. I have people with
Yeah.
different beliefs, and they come
Yeah.
in, and their spiritual practice is leveraged to
Mm,
assist the psychological, emotional
yeah.
process that they're in. So
Right.
yes, absolutely, 100%.
Right. So that's, yeah, I felt like this is important to mention because it can be a remedy, but not in a sense of getting rid of or eliminating all the symptoms.
No, but
Because
it's
there's,
right. It's a support, right? It's a
yes,
very important support. Yes,
yes,
but
yes.
no, not a. It's not a. It's not
Yeah.
a. It's not a fix. It's not an ultimate fix,
No. Yeah.
right?
No. I still deal with the responses and the triggers, but in a different way than I
Yes,
used before.
yes.
So the deeper I go into this understanding that I'm not the body mind. So this is something that you mentioned too. Do you have? I know you mentioned in a different way on your website. I read with the Buddhist psychology. You mentioned. I think you quoted a psychiatrist. What's his name? Dr. Sidney J. Blatz, his name is.
Hmm.
So, but you also said something about, from Buddhism, from the Buddhist perspective, the over identification with body mind, which you called nature and nurture aspect of being human. So in Vedanta, it's very clear that we are not the body, we're not the mind. So when that is really truly established, something happens where it's not that you're becoming less human and less emotional and detached from everything. It's just that becomes a lot more playful, the whole thing. That you're not taking the movements of body mind seriously anymore. I think that's what happens too. It's a lot more playful. Is that something that you relate with? I'm wondering.
It is absolutely. I think you're touching on a crucial. There's many teachings that go to what you're referring to. So I suppose what we can say is that the secondary witness is tied to imagined
Mm.
psychosomatic experience that it
Yes.
had. The
Yes.
secondary, right? Your idealized self
Yeah.
has a psychosomatic weight, and your
Right.
body gets perceived. There's a tremendous amount of distortion that emerges out of this,
Yeah.
and there's a gravity to that feeling. You
Mm.
feel
Yeah.
a certain way,
Yeah.
and to your point,
Yeah.
if that can become disarticulated and not so
Mm.
fixated,
Yeah.
you become freer to experience a whole slew of energies.
Uh-huh.
You can
Uh,
dance with the cosmos a little more. That would be
right.
the goal, to your point.
Right. Yeah. That's it.
Absolutely.
Gosh, that's it. Does it require to get to understand what you just said, what I'm saying here, what you say? I'm wondering if with your clients and people around you, do they have to have this inclination to spirituality? To are they open to spiritual concepts, or it's okay to be an atheist and still engage with this idea that we can dance with the universe from a universal way?
I think so, because I think there is something profoundly innate going on. I think you just touched upon something where, this distinction between that which is psychological and that which is spiritual. Now,
Mm,
for purposes of language and for purposes
yeah.
of talking about it, it
Uh,
is useful to make these distinctions, but there is a level in which there is a
mm,
type of a continuous ongoing
mm,
process going on
right.
by which
Mm,
people seem to sort of generate their own insight and generate
mm.
and they can disidentify, and then that sort of openness occurs. They don't need to think
Yeah,
about,
right.
all of a sudden they catch themselves being spontaneous anyway.
Ah,
And you
yeah,
know
yeah. Huh.
and that seems getting lost you don't, not
Mm.
in a dissociated way, but sort of you getting lost with your own relationship with
Huh.
reality. So like, again, we can
Huh.
use atheistic language, like you just be thoroughly completely free to be pragmatic and
Mm. Yes.
spontaneous.
Ah, yeah, I love that, Tiago. That's a beautiful way of saying that. Ah, free to be exactly what you are, this expression that is here now, just free to be.
Yeah, because I
No
mean,
judge.
it's
Mm,
sort of like,
mm,
even for an atheist, it's sort of like, can you comprehend the totality of the universe? Can you
yeah,
comprehend the totality of the
yeah,
cosmos? So there's this immensity to the thing. It's like, I
yeah,
don't know the size of it. Cool. Now,
yeah.
can you completely
Mm,
relax into that? Can
mm,
you relax yourself into
mm.
this and your body and who you think you have to be? So you see, you go
Right.
from this big place to sort of, again, an image of who you think you are, and
Yes.
that's the interesting part, I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Gosh, what's not to love about conversations like this?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
I
I
live
agree.
for them. Yeah, I can't help it. So you mentioned, yeah, you talk about true meditation. So can you talk to me a bit more about that? True meditation, not just mindfulness. This you have the specific statement on your website. So I'd love to
I
hear a bit
do,
more.
yeah. So, we have John Kabat-Zinn to blame for mindfulness. I mean, he's a fantastic doctor. He's the guy who did the mindfulness based stress reduction protocol. They needed something to measure meditation in the West, and he was,
Right,
this was back in the 70s.
right.
And so mindfulness is a complex word, but mindfulness is the beginning of a practice.
Mm,
It's the initial stage. It's not the whole practice. Never has
right,
been.
right.
Mindfulness is simply, as my mentor calls it, a manufactured corrective experience, which is an
Mm,
important thing. So, what does that mean? Just imagine. I imagine your audience, they connect with yoga, or so imagine doing a yoga pose,
yeah,
like a tree pose
yeah,
or something. Yeah,
yeah.
right. It takes a certain amount of exertion to do that pose.
Right.
You're manufacturing something,
Mm,
and to manufacture a sense of stillness.
yeah.
Now, all of that is very, very important. So it's shamatha, the beginning part of the practice, where it's like you light a candle and you look at the candle. You train the breath. You get
Mm,
distracted, you come back to the breath. all of those are in a way preliminary practices. And what they're setting up, the preliminary stage is that it synchronizes, relaxes your system.
Mm,
It's almost like
mm,
the whole point of yoga is shavasana, right? The whole
yeah,
point
yeah,
is the last pose, right?
yes,
If we
yes.
all did,
Mm,
if we had a yoga studio, somebody needs to come
mm.
up with this, which is a studio that does the whole yoga practice, right? The whole yoga practice is
Right.
asana, and then pranayama, asana, shavasana, then pranayama, and then meditation. Like, you go
Right.
into meditation after you do shavasana, which is to say, after that
Mm,
stabilization period, there's a period in which you stop trying to meditate. You stop
mm,
trying to
mm,
manufacture any
mm,
kind of experience. You're not
mm.
there using
Wow.
technique or something like that.
Mm,
And over
mm,
time, in the beginning, nothing happens, but over
okay.
time,
Mm,
there's a settling that occurs, and it happens organically and spontaneously, and that is the second part of the practice, and that would
mm,
be the insight part of the practice, that things quiet down and
mm.
they open up in a different way. And
Right.
that's the other part of the practice, it's because it's more subtle and sophisticated. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot, I'm not alone in talking about this, but lots of teachers out there talk about this. But the mindfulness is so easy to brand and has been so
Yes.
branded over the
Yes.
past 20, 30 years
Yeah.
that we need a pushback now on talking about the other part of the practice, the non-dual part of the practice,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because non-dual practice was the point was never to become a good meditator. The point
Mm,
was to use meditation to experience liberation from the things we're talking about. It's never
right.
to look good on the cover of
Mm,
the yoga
mm.
journal.
Yes. Yes. It just reminded me of a yogi who came from India here, and he was a non-dual Vedanta actually teacher too back in India. But then when he came here, he noticed that it was easier for him to make money doing the yoga, teaching yoga. And then somebody said that to him. I think his master came to visit, and they saw him doing that, and said, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be teaching Vedanta here, not doing you're doing the physical yoga thing." And he said, it's easy to make money that way. I need to sell them something. So it almost like as a child would answer that question. He was not really trying to, in a way, he found the best way to still transmit his teachings, but in a way that he could survive, make some money. So I don't know. It's hard. It's really, really hard to judge, isn't it, Tiago? A lot of times, the levels where we are. Like, people talk about enlightenment. What is to be enlightened? To be realized. How do we know when somebody's enlightened? How do we know? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, my take on the enlightenment, for all intents purposes, is a problematic construct, I think, for
Mm,
Westerners altogether. But it's a perfect example of where we can become infinitely entertained with the conceptual arising of what something like that might be,
right.
and
Yeah.
that there is something to achieve, there is
Right.
something to go after, that there is something to manufacture, that there is a better state
Mm,
than whatever is already given. And
right. Yeah.
there's not enough of non dual cutting through, which is to
Right.
say, your state of awareness is complete unto itself.
Mm,
Now, is that enlightenment? Well,
mm,
the texts certainly suggest that, and they say that this awareness that catches that you're distracted
yes.
is actually the complete awakened Buddha. Buddha as awake, right? The
Yes.
word Buddha means awake, right? And
Yes.
so is completely awake already, complete. And so
Yes.
in a way, seeking, we have to be careful there, I suppose, because we
Yeah.
have to, there's a, what am I, I'm trying to say that there is a sophisticated yet, there's a sophisticated yet simple balance with effort and letting go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
dynamic balance
Yep.
between effort and letting go
Yeah.
usually transcends what we imagine that to
Mm.
be. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
and that transcending is probably closer to what we're talking about
mm,
as enlightenment. You see,
mm,
it's a beyond experience. So we have to go
right.
beyond the mind and beyond what we imagine anytime we talk about this.
Mm,
That's my take on it, my
yes.
opinion on it.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. To me, I love your clarity, how you put, these concepts into word. It's not easy to do that, and you're very sophisticated. Um, so I'm sure you know that how you do that. You just weave, these concepts. Not easy to do that.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's just not easy at all. I just I love being
Well,
still.
I'm glad it makes
It
sense. I
does.
don't want to, I'm afraid of sounding too academic or something,
No,
Like,
no, it does. Yeah, but that's something that it is, right? That's what you are, what the mind has come to learn, and you're just expressing, being it again,
it's
which is
true.
beautiful. I love that spontaneity, just being you here exactly as you are in this moment.
I
So
appreciate that, Valeria. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
beautiful,
Thank you for
Tiago.
giving the space to do that.
Thank you. Oh
Yeah.
my God, thank you for being you. And yes, we almost at the end. But regarding enlightenment, the only, I guess, the only, let's
Got all the
say,
way to enlightenment. That's amazing.
yeah, enlightenment, realization. The only way really to know, in a sense, like if we are there, in a sense of knowing that we are already there. It's not
Yeah,
right.
I think
It's not.
yes, and I think that there's there's a certain to your point earlier about right. It goes back to the primary and
Mm,
secondary witness that
yeah.
there's a sense of establishing confidence in the primary witness itself,
Mm,
of
mm,
understanding your
mm,
true nature,
mm,
and then
yeah.
right regaining confidence that that's in fact your true nature over
Mm,
and over and over, and it
yeah.
becomes easier and easier to be in that. You get confused, you come back, and confused and come back, and then you
Right.
stay longer and longer and longer, and then
Mm,
you get confused, and so that dance gets a
mm,
little easier and you get skilled at the dance itself.
right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's like gets to sort of realization. Yeah.
Yes, right. It will get you to that point. And would you say that that translates into, when it comes to the human experience, into peace, in that sense of calmness, where in the face of challenges, where let's say I'm about to die, lose the body in 2 days, and there's no really, desperation, confusion. It's quite the opposite. You become actually more clear about, okay, the time has come to just let go of this. It might be the hardest thing for most people, most of us, to do. Do you feel that this might be a way to know and to measure what self-realization is?
Yeah, you just went right to the heart of it, which I really appreciate. I think that is the measure. I think our own sort of sense of equanimity and
Yeah.
in the face of death itself, if who knows, sort of thing, right? But if we have the opportunity to be in a situation where we're aware that it's coming, or we're
Right. Right. Right.
present to the experience
Yeah.
that's bound to occur. Um, yes, that we can uh, open-heartedly and
Mm.
courageously
Yeah.
confront that end with a sense of dignity for
Mm.
this is for us, right? Like
Yes.
for
Yeah.
ourselves. That's
Yeah.
certainly what my aspiration is
Mm.
to
Yeah.
soothe my death anxiety along the way, for sure, 100%. I
Yes.
think so.
I feel the same way. Yeah. If there's a purpose, that's my purpose. If there's a goal to this life, but
Yeah,
then it's a practice too. So I do it at every time I see myself in challenging situations that, I see emotional turmoil trying to take hold of me. That's when I notice that I can go back to calmness and just let it be what it is. I mean, I've been doing this dance for a long time now, and it becomes more interesting by the second, because yeah, when we kind of start seeing that it's possible to close that gap between non-dual and dual, actually is one and the same anyway. Everything,
that's right.
there's just the divine. Everything's sacred, so everything is a divine. So there's, why would we be afraid of ourselves in a way? Everything is, I mean, it's so clear to me. Everything that I look at,
Yes, but
everything is.
the fear, right? Like to your point
Mm,
earlier, like the I, the ego, in this
yeah.
sense that we've talked about earlier. I mean, or to use Western psychological language, our defensive architecture is very
Yes.
entrenched, and it gets
Right.
very afraid that it
Mm.
might die. And I can understand why
Yes.
from a certain point of view. But
Yes.
I agree with you that in a non-dual way, we can nurture it
Mm.
to relax. It's going to be
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
I think so.
Or we can tame it. And that's really the body
Yes.
mind. That's my practice. Yeah. Kind of training the body mind to
Yes.
ah, to kind of immerse in this perfume of the infinite. So it's the
Wow, that's
finite kind
beautiful.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of, just saturated with the infinite. And it's not, I mean, it's a
Immerse in the
beautiful,
perfume of the infinite. I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Gosh, I love metaphors and poetry and all that, maybe for a reason. It's kind of hard to use kind of the language that's this regular language. So I think
Yes.
poetry really does the
Yes.
job. So we're almost at the end. I really, really appreciate your presence in our reality. It's just incredibly wise, profound, caring. It's beautiful, though. Thank you, Tiago, for being you. Thank you.
No, thank you so
Uh,
much.
yeah,
Thank you for
thank
your
you.
time and creating the space to have such a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you for saying yes. So I want to mention your services, quick psychotherapy, consulting and clinical coaching. And I want to mention also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is something that you practice too. Do you suggest actually this to your clients as well, the practice of Jiu-Jitsu?
Sometimes, yeah, there's a part of my consulting that's a performance practice, and some people. I consult with the fire department in Colorado and
Yeah.
other agencies sometimes, and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is can be I usually use it in
Mm,
combination with yoga and
yeah.
meditation, so that you get a little bit of the hard and then the soft and then the relaxing,
Mm,
and you go
yeah.
through a sort of experience of regulating. I think Brazilian Jiu Jitsu just is super interesting in itself. I think
Yes.
it's a gift Brazil gave the world, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
there's a part of that that I think is profound. So,
Yeah.
but people become interested in that. But
Right. Yeah, it's there's so much, a lot of marketing on that too. But thank you for honoring that too. Yeah, there's something about martial arts that I really appreciate. It's the whole philosophy behind it, and it's holistic, and it's highly spiritual. I have seen a lot
yes,
of the martial arts. When you go deeper into it, it's so like yoga. It's spiritual. So thank you so much again. Your website is theprimarywitness.com. It will be clickable on the podcast notes. But for now, take good care of your beautiful self, Tiago, and we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch again. Bye for now.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.